Hello and welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. Another edition here of Mean Streets coming at you a little bit earlier live on our FTN Network YouTube page here on a Game Plus Network. Chris, Meaney and Kyle Murray here with you for the next little bit. As you see, we are taking part in a live Underdog Best Ball Draft over at UnderdogFantasy.com. Best Ball Mania 3, and we are off and running. Kyle, what's up, sir? It looks like you have pick 7, and I have pick 9, and no real surprises off the top of the board. We got CMC, Taylor, Jefferson, Cup. What's going on, good sir? Thanks for taking the time here, dude. I see you're doing a lot of these now on our YouTube page. This is awesome.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm trying to do as many of these best balls as I can before the season gets started. Apparently, I can just never get a top 5 or even top 4 pick. That's kind of what I've been hoping for, and I've really struggled to get that. But yeah, number 7 today. So excited to be here. Looking forward to doing these with you. And yeah, I'm ready to get going.
All right, you are on the clock, good sir.
Yeah.
So yeah, you didn't get a top 5 pick, but you're ready to rock now.
Yeah, even at 7, like you kind of hope that maybe Eckler or Chase fall to you and like on a good day, and obviously that didn't happen. So I've been taking a lot of Henry and Diggs here, like in these mid picks. So I'm actually gonna go with something a little bit different here. Go Dalvin Cook today.
Dalvin, I like it. Giddy up. So that's what you'd like, right? You want a top 5? I know we're talking best ball here, but if you're also drafting with your buddies here this weekend, you could pick anywhere you want on the board in the first round. Is that what you want? Top 5?
In a redraft, I want top 4. Get one of those really elite studs. Like I feel that Taylor and McCaffrey, as well as Jefferson and Cup, are kind of in two tiers of their own at their own respective positions. But in redraft, I want a top 6 pick because ideally top 5. But if I can get a shot at Jamar Chase, I kind of loop him in that elite range with those guys up there, just because I think his upside is so monstrous any given week, as we saw last year, right? So I ideally want a top 5 pick. In best ball, top 4 in redraft. So that's kind of my strategy this year.
Yeah, I like it. I dig it a lot. Kyle's got a lot of great info already on our YouTube page. For those that are watching here on Game Plus Network, we do appreciate you. If you're live in the chat, you have any comments, any questions, you can leave them there. Hopefully we can see them throughout the show. If not, always circling back to ask any questions or answer any questions that you do have. But you have like a top 5 stacks video, which I thought was pretty cool on our YouTube page as well. And if you're unfamiliar with Underdog Fantasy, you can use the promo code FTN. They'll match your first deposit 100% and up to $100. No, you can drop whatever you want in there, of course, but using the promo code FTN will help you out just a little bit here. I went Devonte Adams ahead of Diggs. I've been going kind of back and forth with those two guys. Actually, I have Adams ranked ahead of Diggs slightly, but I mean, we're splitting hairs at that point. I think they're both studs. I do believe Buffalo's offense will roll a little bit nicer than Las Vegas, but man, I am digging this Raiders offense, man. I really am. I think I think Carr's an underrated quarterback, and I think Devonte Adams maybe. Let's be honest, Kyle. It's probably not going to be like pitch and catch like Aaron Rodgers and him back in the day, but I think it's going to be pretty close, man. I'm excited about what that offense could look like in a high-powered division.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like they're one of those offenses that mid-season we can look back on and be like, why didn't we have more respect for them? Or like, why didn't we just trust them a little bit more? Because, even last year we saw Derek Carr move the ball fine. Like the Raiders were a really, really good offense last year, so it wouldn't be that surprising. Obviously, I think the big thing is like making out Carr to be Aaron Rodgers is difficult because it's tough to fill the shoes of Aaron Rodgers for anybody, just because Aaron Rodgers is arguably the best quarterback in the game right now, even at his age. Like, he's just so good. But that's probably the big question mark there. But yeah, I mean, talk about Derek Carr being underrated. I would even say Hunter Renfrow is underrated as a slot receiver. And you have Darren Waller, who's just one of the bigger mismatches in the game at tight end. And then obviously Devonte Adams, best wide receiver in the game right now. So yeah, I mean, I think mid-season it could look like, hey, maybe we look back on and just feel like we should have trusted them a little bit more. I'm on the board now here, and Alvin Kamara was a guy that earlier on in the season I drafted so much in like the 4th and 5th round.
Yeah, he's moved up now.
So he's been a guy that I've been avoiding a lot in the second, just because I feel like, I have all the exposure that I need here. So I'm going to go wide receiver here. I'm going to go Mike Evans, which I'm actually drafting above Tyreek Hill, which might be a little bit of a hot take, but I love Mike Evans this year, even with the potential that Godwin returns earlier on. I love Mike Evans. I love the touchdown upside that he brings in a half-point PPR. That's even better to have. So Evans is my guy here.
Yeah, this is a half-point setting. Again, best ball, just kind of draft and forget it. We talked earlier about stacks. I don't think it's I don't think you need to get, discouraged if you leave your draft and you don't have a stack and it didn't work out. It's tough. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
I've started drafts with like Chase and Higgins, and then I was like, I don't really need to reach on Burrow, get him, and then Burrow goes, and it really does. It's a gut punch, like not gonna lie, but it's not the end of the world. I think you can still make it happen. But Evans is a guy I like too, right? He's not a guy that's going to catch 100 passes. What he's done is he's just so consistent. 70 grabs every year, 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Tom Brady. Offense is, high-powered, fast-paced. They like to throw the rock there a lot. Do you have any concerns of the offensive line? Because I'm with you. I like Evans. I think it's a good pick. And I think he's kind of falling down a little bit. Maybe not so much here today, but I've seen him fall down a little bit. Do you have any concerns, like, as we head closer to the line, that the offensive line is, or closer to the season, that the offensive line is like maybe a little bit depleted right now?
Yeah, a little bit, but overall, just a lot of confidence in the weapons and the offense.
Yeah.
So just kind of relying on that. We've seen teams with bad offensive lines have produce good fantasy weapons over the past couple of years. Like, you look at the Bengals last year; they were probably a bottom 5, bottom 10 offensive line. Last year, they made it to the Super Bowl. They had a ton of elite weapons, not only really good weapons, but elite weapons from a fantasy perspective. Top 5 fantasy point per game wide receiver, top 7 fantasy point per game running back, and that was all with the bad offensive line. So, it doesn't feel great. I would much rather have them have a good offensive line, just because, especially with Brady back there, it feels like he's probably not going to get moving around, right? He's probably not going to create any extra time for himself back there. So it would feel better to have a better offensive line, but I'm not going to really downgrade it a ton based on the fantasy rankings or anything like that.
Yeah, and Brady gets it out quick, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he knows what he's doing. He's seen his pressure. So Allen's the first quarterback off the board at pick 30 here. You are up at pick 31. What you thinking?
So I'm definitely looking wide receiver here. It's probably going to be between DJ Moore and Mike Williams. Again, I do also like Cortland Sutton here, but I've taken a lot of Cortland Sutton over this best ball season, so I'm going to go with DJ Moore. I really like Mike Williams as well, but again,
Yeah, I like all three of these guys that you mentioned.
yeah, for me, like when I get in these scenarios where like I'm picking and there's 3 guys that I really like, I kind of try to think of, like, for me, I've done a ton of best balls. So at this point, I'm also trying to like even out the exposures a little bit too. So like when I have taken so much Mike Williams and I've taken a lot of Cortland Sutton, especially, in June when he was going in the 5th round, I got a lot of Sutton. So at this point, also, I like DJ Moore a lot, so I might as well try to get some of him, while I think that I might have a little bit more of the other 2. So kind of just breaking the tie that way.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think DJ Moore is just getting disrespected, man.
Yeah.
I think since 2019, last 3 years, he's 4th among wide receivers in yards, 5th overall if you include Travis Kelce. He just doesn't get the touchdowns, right? I mean, he hasn't scored a lot of touchdowns lately, but this is an upgrade. Whether you like Baker or not, guys, believe it or not, it is an upgrade at the quarterback position. I took Cortland Sutton, so I was happy that you didn't take him, but I'm kind of with you. I have a lot of Cortland Sutton. We can talk about that in a little bit. I am up here on the clock. Those tight ends, man, like Pitts and Andrews are going, I feel like, a lot earlier in these best ball manias. They're not usually hanging around mid 3rd. They're usually pretty much gone. Akers, all right. Wide receiver Waddle. I can go Davis here. Actually, you know what? I don't have a lot of Terry. I'll go Davis. Yeah, Cortland Sutton. My goodness, you're up in a couple picks. We can get into him again. What are you thinking here? You are now official on the clock. You got 2 wideouts and a running back.
Yeah, probably looking wide receiver again here. I really like to stack up wide receivers unless I can find a running back that I do think has like elite upside. Like in my opinion, if you're drafting running backs with not a lot of upside, you're probably just limiting yourself in this contest. So wide receivers, I think, just naturally have more upside. But with someone like Zeke here, he is someone that I do think could, even though he gets a lot of criticism, right? But if he falls in the end zone 18 times, he's probably going to be a running back that gives you a chance to win a tournament like this. And not many running backs have that kind of upside. So even if, Elliott isn't the same player that he once was, and, might not have the same exact role, and, we know Tony Pollard is going to carve out a little role there as well, that top 5% outcome that Zeke has, where he scores 18 to 20 touchdowns on the ground, that can win you a lot of weeks here, especially in a best ball format. So that's kind of the reason why I went with him there. But there are plenty of running backs that I think that you could probably argue just don't really possess a ton of upside. So taking wide receiver makes more sense. But for Zeke, I do think he has the upside to really help you win a format like the Best Ball Mania, which is so many people and obviously so many different competitions going on all at once, right? So yeah, that's kind of the thought process there.
People are too hard on Zeke, I think. Yeah, he had a down year last year, but he still finished with 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like,
Yeah.
he's still going to be a guy that, finds the end zone consistently. The offense is good in Dallas. Again, I can come at you again with awesome offensive line, but I won't do that to you all day. But
Yeah.
yeah, Tyron Smith, right? He is the latest that has gone down, but Zeke's going to be on the field. He's going to be pass protecting. He's a good pass blocker.
Yep.
He's going to be on the field, and both of these guys and Pollard will be on the field too. I think Pollard's a fine selection. For where he's going. But I think that there's a lot. I think there's upside, man. Like getting Zeke as RB 17 and 18 in drafts. I don't think anybody would be shocked if he finished as a top 15, top 10, 12 running back, right? Again,
Yep.
this is an offense that's still going to score a lot of points. He did have, kind of career lows across the board in terms of attempts and, targets and catches. But like I said, he still finished as I believe it was like RB6 last year in a half-point setting. Okay. We can go. This draft comes at you fast. You're up again. I'd like to kind of recap of how things have gone here once we get through this fifth round, but take us away.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm gonna be stealing one of your picks here.
Oh, what are you
But
doing?
Darren Waller, I don't know if you plan on stacking the Raiders, but I
It's
am
all
gonna go
good.
Waller here.
Yeah.
So normally I don't like to be the guy that snipes people, but hey, got to get your guys right. Like for me,
You
it
do.
it does come to a point where if you don't get one of the top 4 or 5 tight ends, like you might as well just wait a while. But Waller again, I think he's kind of hand built for a best ball format where those big weeks really matter more.
I don't have too much DK Metcalf. I know this is not a sexy pick, but man, DK Metcalf, I don't think it matters really who the quarterback is. I was kind of debating between Thomas, Mooney, and Moore there. And I was also looking at a running back, but I think I'll get one here within a couple picks. I'm hoping actually that I could get maybe AJ Dillon here. I actually have a lot of shares of AJ Dillon. It's like my RB2 and around pick 60. Yeah, Waller wasn't. I mean, I have a lot of, like I told you off the top of the show, I like I like the Raiders this year. So I do have quite a bit of either Adams and Renfro or Adams and Waller, and Carr you can get pretty late as well. But I do like that pick from you. Yeah, you're coming back up here. So Michael Thomas just went. What do you think about Michael Thomas, man? Like this is the format to get him. Not
Yeah.
a lot of risk at pick 60, right?
I mean, I think there's a lot to say about taking somebody that you kind of just described, like DK Metcalf, right? Like not a sexy pick, but like Zeke is the
Yeah.
same way. David Montgomery, same thing. Michael Thomas, same sort of like strategy or idea, right? The public is just so against these guys, and for whatever reason, right? And they might not even be bad players or in bad spots. It's just the public doesn't love them. And when we keep in mind of Underdog, they are a 100% ADP driven ranking, right? Like their rankings are driven based on the ADP, so it's based solely on the public. It's not like ESPN where they have their rankings and they
Oh
have
yeah.
separate ADPs. So Underdog is driven by these ADPs. Sure, they had an initial ranking to start, but now it's driven by the ADP. So it gives you a ton of leverage there if you're taking these these non-attractive plays. I'm
Who
gonna go
you're up
with
to, by the
Darnell.
way, just want to let you
Yeah,
know.
I was looking at wide receivers. I'm gonna go Darnell Mooney. That is one thing about doing these live drafts. Like sometimes you don't even realize that you're on the
Yeah,
clock there. But yeah, I went with Mooney.
nice. I dig it. So the one thing about DK, whether it's Lock or Geno, and I think who knows? Pete Carroll says he has 2 quarterback ones. He's a liar. Um, But last year in a very small sample, 4 games, I mean, DK had 5 touchdowns in that span. He averaged 6.8 more fantasy points per game with Geno than Russ last year. Now, again, you take that with a grain of salt. It was a very small sample. Russ went through some things last year. He had the thumb injury. He actually, overall, if you look at just his entire career and then the last few years, last year, even without the thumb injury, it was looking like it was going to be a down year for him. But man, DK, I feel like I'm more comfortable taking DK than Lockett. Lockett has been just so boom or bust over the course of his career. I feel like there will be a lot more bust than maybe boom this year, but I think the consistency could be there with DK, and then end up getting AJ Dillon after. I don't know what you think about Dillon and Jones. I think they're both fine. I think you
Yeah.
can go back to a few years ago and like Kamara and Ingram. These guys were both awesome. They were both low end RB1s. Kamara was obviously better, and Ingram was the guy that you got around round 6, 7, 8, and he kind of just hung around as like a solid RB2. So how do you feel like that backfield is going to play out? I know that Aaron's going higher, but do you have a preference between either of these guys on your radar at all?
Yeah, I like them both. In Underdog, I do in their format where it's half point PPR. I do like Dylan probably a little bit more, and the fact that sometimes you can get him even in the 7th round if he falls, which is really nice. Like if it's a spot where I go really wide receiver heavy, or maybe I get a tight end and a quarterback early, and I only have one running back in the 6th or 7th round, he's the first guy that I look at. He's the guy that I want as my RB2. Not only do I think he has upside as is, but you know God forbid something happens there and he is just the only running back there, he's just his upside is just monstrous, right? So that is stuff to consider when you're drafting these guys, like paths to success, and that's a real path for AJ Dillon. But I think even now, like, he has double-digit touchdown upside, which is always good to have here. I'm going to keep stacking up these wide receivers, go with a guy who I really like, and a team that I talked about quite a bit in that YouTube video with the top stacks. It's the Giants. Love Kadarius Toney this year. We've heard all the comparisons to the Bills offense and how Kadarius Toney is going to be Stephon Diggs with Brian Dable as the coach in New York. And if that's anything close to reality, Kadarius Toney's in for a big year. We saw the upside that he has when he had the monstrous game last year against the Cowboys. Those are the kinds of people that I think you want to be drafting in best ball, guys that can have pop off weeks. And Tony is definitely one of those guys. So he's my pick here.
This guy just picked Russell Wilson before me. Like, come on, bud.
Oh,
McCutch. Like, that stuff burns me. I get rattled. Well, just, oh, man, it's a little bit of a reach for Renfro. And these are the things that you kind of run into with stacks, right? Like, do
yeah.
you want to do this? Like, it's not too bad, actually. Like, I'm not going to pick again for a little bit.
I like the
Yeah,
Renfro pick.
that burned me. The Russ pick. This happened to me once earlier. I had Judy and Sutton, and then I was gonna pick Russ, and the guy in front of me, I was like, this guy's not gonna pick Russ. He already has 2 quarterbacks. I was wondering if he was even hanging out in the draft or he got bounced and he's kind of getting auto draft. And he did. He went Russ as his 3rd quarterback. Come on,
man.
buddy, you're killing me. But back to the Packers guys for a second. Yeah, I think, Aaron Jones is like 47 plus grabs in each of his last 3 years. His splits with Devonte Adams are significant. Like, he's definitely going to be a big player in the passing game. But AJ Dillon, man, he had more red zone attempts than him. He had more goal line carries than him. And he was actually a sneaky pass catcher, right? I think he grabbed 37 of 40 targets or 34 of 37 targets. So it's not going to be all Aaron Jones. I think AJ can get up there to maybe crack 1,000 on the ground. It's going to be a team that runs the rock quite a bit and relies a lot on their defense this year.
I really liked your comparison to the Saints back when Ingram and Kamara both had pretty good seasons, and just because of the fact that we saw Alvin Kamara, he was running back 1 that year, and he didn't really do it a lot based on work on the ground. Sure, he scored some touchdowns, but you're going to need to do that if you're going to be the RB1. But he did it through the air. He had over 100 catches, and that is the kind of upside that Aaron Jones has. So I still like Aaron Jones a ton here, but I do prefer Dillon in the half point PPR formats, and just based on kind of where I can get each guy. So I like both of them, but just based on who I can draft, I tend to get more AJ Dillon. I guess that's the way I should phrase it.
Nice. You are up and you went Tom. Yeah. So there you go.
Yep.
You got your stack here. So Kyle is looking like Brady quarterback, Dalvin Cook, Zeke. He's got Mike Evans, DJ Moore. It went away from me. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Kadarius Toney, and Darren Waller. I like the way that this team is shaping up. I took the best running back of all time before he actually plays a snap in a real NFL game, Damien Pierce. It's crazy how things have changed, and this just happens. And I'm not in on him because of the latest stuff that's happened in preseason. And yesterday he looked pretty good too. I think he had like 6 carries and nearly 40 yards and found the end zone. Man, you said you've been doing these drafts for a while. 2 months ago, this is a guy that you could easily get in the 11th round, easily. And now ADP has climbed to 90. I take him as pick 88, halfway through the 8th round. Like, give you a feel of other running backs that are up on the board. Jacobs was available at the time. Miles Sanders, Rashad Penny, Antonio Gibson. You got the Buffalo boys in there as well, and Kareem Hunt. Too early? Are you a fan? What's your thoughts on Damien Pierce, man? Because he's certainly trendy right now.
I mean, you said 2 months ago he was like a 12th round pick. 2 days from now, he'll be a 6th round pick on average. I'm
might be, yeah.
Like yesterday, I took him in the 7th round in a draft. So I think getting him in the 8th here is actually pretty good value. Like I do think that eventually he's going to be a 5th or 6th round pick in these best balls. The thing about these best balls is they're so much more aggressive than like your standard redraft, because everybody needs to get their guy. Like they don't waste any time, and a lot of times people are reaching to make sure their stacks are complete. So you see guys like Cortland Sutton going in the 3rd round here, but in your redraft league he's probably going 5th or 6th round. But with how aggressive these drafts are, I think Pierce is going to be a 6th round pick on average by the time that the season actually rolls around.
Do you think that's too rich for your blood? 6th? It's getting up there, right?
Yeah, but I mean, again, it all depends on lineup construction, right? Like if he's where basically you'd be taking him in that AJ Dillon range, which is totally fine in my opinion. Like if he's going to be your RB2 in a spot where you already have 4 wide receivers or maybe 3 wide receivers and a tight end and a quarterback already, I don't mind that at all. I think when it comes down to best balls, you again want to draft for upside. And if this guy is going to be the RB1 all year long, even if that offense is, below average, which I don't even think that I'm not even sold on them being below average. I think that they can easily be an average offense in this league. Then yeah, I think the upside is for sure there. It's all about volume. And based on what we've seen and what we've heard from him, it sounds like they want to give him a lot of work. So I have no issue with Pierce, even in the 6th round.
Here you go. You were on the clock, good sir.
Yeah, this part is tricky. I don't need a quarterback. I suppose I could look running back, but there's none that I really love. So I'm probably going to end up looking for some more upside here at the wide receiver position. Now I'm going to go with Traylon Burks, the guy who I think, again, has been, I feel like every year you hear those storylines of people, not having good camp. Their ADP falls a ton, and then they have a good year. And not to say that Traylon Burks, there's no merit to any of the training camp stuff, but again, I think this is a guy who has a ton of upside. I think he has real upside to be the wide receiver 1 in a Tennessee offense that I don't think will be as good as what we've seen because they don't have AJ Brown anymore, but they still have Derrick Henry. Like they're still gonna be able to move the ball. They added Robert Woods as well. I think this could be an offense that is potentially slept on as well. So Traylon Burks in the 9th round, late 9th, I'll take that.
Man, I did a rookie only draft the other day, and so I also did one with Adam Pfeiffer. Of course, you guys were together last week, I believe, or earlier this week doing a best ball, and you'll be doing look for them on our FTN Network YouTube page. You guys will be doing a couple more. And I think I took Traylon Burks. I believe I had maybe the 3rd pick or 4th pick, and I took him there. And then earlier this week, I did another one, just rookie only, and it's like year 8 or 9 in a dynasty league. He fell to like the 8th overall pick.
Wow.
It's like, wow, that is absolutely a steal, and I'm only assuming that this stuff happened because of like just, some of the conflicting reports, right? This guy's lining up on the wrong side of the field, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, I think it's fine. I need a tight end here. I might go Zach Ertz.
I mean, it was the same thing with Jamar Chase last year, right? Like he
Can't
was
catch.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, honestly, it's just the most absurd report ever when you really think about it. Like, this is a guy drafted as number 5 overall. He was one of the best receivers in the league when he played in college, or I guess in the nation. But yeah, I mean, it's just some of that stuff. Some of the reports do get a little bit absurd here. Now, running back, again, I do want a running back here. Kenneth Walker's top of the board. Don't love the reports from him, but again, when it comes down to upside in the 10th round, late on in the year, if he becomes a guy like Javonte Williams, where last year he carved out that role and he had those 4, 5, 6 big weeks towards the end of the year that can really help you in playoff time. That's kind of what I'm drafting a Walker here for. I don't love that he's my 3rd running back, but I'll still take it here.
Yeah, again, things change so quickly. Like, who would have thought Pierce going ahead of Walker? Like, this is a thing
Yeah,
that's happening,
exactly.
and I think I'm fine with it. But in this best ball format, yeah, Walker is pick 114, the upside. Rashad Penny's never really been able to stay healthy. He's behind the eight ball here a little bit as a rookie starting off like this, but in a best ball format, once he gets going, I think he's going to overtake Rashad Penny in that backfield. And I think he could be like a true bell cow back. And you're not going to get a lot of these guys. In fact, you won't really get any at this point of the draft in terms of running backs. Yeah, Jamar Chase, I got his wide receiver 26 last year in
Yeah.
a high stakes league like a week before the season started. Think about that. And now he's going as like a top 3 wide
Yep.
receiver. Back to Pierce for a second. Last night watching Michael Govier and Vlad Sedler in a high stakes draft. Pierce won his RB21. That's as high as I have seen him. I have him ranked inside as a top 30 running back here. Again, I don't think the offensive line is atrocious. They opened up some holes for him yesterday, and he just has the ability and opportunity to be, a bell cow back inside that offense, catching some passes out of the backfield, dealing with some veteran backs and Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead. And also, I think Marlon Mack, maybe not in this format, but in a deeper format, it's like absolutely free because Pierce is getting all that attention. This is a guy that you can take in the final rounds of your draft, and it's not bad to have that next man up sort of running back and just depth in your squad. But we are here in the 11th round. First couple picks in the 11th, some wide receivers here in Dotson, Dobbs, and Palmer. Russell Gage, so a little bit of a wide receiver run. You were coming up in a couple, and then I am back up. So let's look at your team. What do you got? You got Brady, Cook, Zeke, Walker, Evans, DJ Moore, Donald Mooney, Kadarius Toney, Traylon Burks, and Darren Waller. Daily Handle in the house laughing at Damien Pierce, also calling me a big Seattle fan now. I don't know about that. I don't think we'll go that far. I'm not a big Seahawks fan, that's for sure. So a couple picks. What are you thinking? What are you going to do? You're going to go back to wide receiver here?
I'm probably gonna look running back again here. Like I feel pretty good about my wide receivers. And I kind of missed the boat on some of the other receivers that I were targeting. Like I wanted to try to get another Tampa wide receiver here. Russell Gage just went off the board though. I was kind of looking for him, which is a little bit of a bummer. I wouldn't have even minded getting Rashad White here and pairing him with Brady. So 3 Tampa Bay pass catchers were just taken before my pick, which is not ideal. That's what I was looking for. So I'm probably just gonna take another running back here. Brian Robinson is on the board again, 11th round. One of those guys that moved up a ton in terms of ADP, but again, he does have upside. While I do think that the Antonio Gibson hate has maybe crossed the line, gone a little bit too far at this point, I still think that drafting for upside and Brian Robinson does have the upside to finish or be the running back 1 here in this Washington offense, which we've seen be a decent role over the last couple of years with Gibson. So I'm going to pull the trigger on Robinson.
Nice. I like it. I went so I've gone back-to-back tight ends here. Man, if I don't get an elite tight end, I feel like I have to do this. I've kind of gone, maybe I do have a lot of Komet. Like if it's Ertz or Komet, then I'm sure like there are drafts where I've gone, okay, maybe Njoku here, a little bit of Robert Tonyan, maybe last pick, Brevin Jordan. But I just feel like I don't like my team as much with these. If 2 of the 3 of my tight ends are just kind of dart throws. So I think, with Ertz for the first few weeks of the season, no, DeAndre Hopkins, there's a bit of a rapport there. I know he hasn't been on the field yet, but he's a veteran. I really do believe that at this point of the season, a lot of teams are, just letting these vets, not push through these injuries that could just turn into bigger injuries. So I'm not totally worried about Ertz. For Komet, man, I'm kind of hoping that I can get Fields here in a couple picks. I'd feel a little bit better about that. I know he scored 0 touchdowns last year, and this is going to be a run-heavy team. They've done absolutely nothing they did nothing really in the offseason to help out Justin Fields in this offense, man. Like Velus Jones in the draft is like a punt returner or just kind of gadget player. They didn't replace Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and Cole Kmet. Like I can't imagine a scenario where Mooney doesn't finish inside the top 15 in targets, and Kmet was already top 12 in targets and catches and receiving yards. He just didn't score any touchdowns last year. That's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think so, right? I've seen a lot of Komet slander based on that touchdown stuff, but in terms of this year, like it should be a whole different year. Like you're talking a quarterback, which we all know has upside, And that can finally potentially be realized here in his second year when he gets better. So yeah, I like the Kmet pick, and I like both Kmet and Mooney. I have a ton of Kmet. Like I'm with you. If you're not getting a tight end at the top, looking for a couple at the end is kind of definitely the move. I'm gonna go Jacoby Myers here. A lot of positive reports from him lately, and he's a guy that I don't necessarily have as much that I probably want of in drafts in best ball format. Again, another guy who gets some slander because he doesn't find the end zone quite enough, but a lot of that stuff is, I don't want to say lucky or random, but it can change very, very quickly. Especially if you are someone who has a good role within the offense, like Myers should, like someone like Komet should. So, yeah, I think that's kind of another approach to take when looking for some value here.
All right, those that are maybe just joining us, live, we are obviously taking part in an Underdog best ball draft here. Chris Meaney and Kyle Murray in the house. We are just about into the 13th round, and we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. See some people live in the chat. If you're unfamiliar, underdogfantasy.com. There's all kinds of things you can do on their website, not just best ball drafts. Of course, best ball drafts are super fun. Draft and forget it, and it's a good way to kind of get a bit of a feel if you are taking part in home drafts here in the next couple days. I think it's better than mocks. Mocks are just like you go to a website and do a mock. It's just not true. And you get a bit of a better feel here how maybe the draft board will play out and people putting their hard-earned bucks on the line. So, like you said, true ADP here as opposed to looking over at ESPN or Yahoo and seeing Cortland Sutton going in the 6th and 7th round. Not going to be the case here in these formats. So you're coming up here again to start off the 13th round. We had DJ Chark, Hunter Henry, Michael Carter, Christian Watson, Gerald Everett. And then you are on deck here. So promo code FTN throughout the season, they're going to have props. We have a free pick tracker over at ftndaily.com, giving some underdog props as well. And you can mix and match across all the sports, and they're doing absolutely everything over at Underdog. So you are away. You got 20 seconds to make your pick in the 13th round.
Yep, gonna go with Khalil Herbert here. Again, just trying to find some ancillary running backs, behind Cook and Zeke that have that upside to maybe be the running back one on their team. And you can kind of see the mold with my team, right? I went Walker, Robinson, and Herbert, all guys who might not be the current RB1, but I think have paths to displace the current RB1 and kind of take over that job. And again, and especially in formats where I don't have to set the lineup, if Khalil Herbert falls in the end zone twice, that's great because I don't have to worry about picking the right week that he does that, right? He's just going to automatically pop in the lineup if he scores enough points to do so. So those kinds of guys that I think are really, really strong for these kinds of formats. And I think that's something that people might not think about enough in best balls. Like that goes a long way to say, hey, I don't have to worry about picking the days that I play this guy, right? He's just going to set the lineup for me. So that stuff goes a long way, especially with running backs.
I love it. Yeah. I'm a fan. I like him too. We already have a look of how things could play out if Dave Montgomery suffered an injury or if he wasn't, around. We had I think he had a stretch of 3 or 4 games where in those games when there was no Montgomery, he was touching the ball like 20 times. He's just a good running back too. Like he's got a nice cut and first step and he's pretty explosive. And there's been some weird reports about Montgomery, right? That maybe he won't be as involved. It's clear what the Bears want to do. There's some zone runs, outside runs. I think they're going to use Fields and all these backs to run the rock. But man, they're also going to have to throw. I would say your Lions are better than the Bears this year. Better record, better season Detroit than Chicago.
That's the hope. I don't know if that's saying a whole lot, but yeah, that's definitely the hope. But yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes down to these guys being fantasy relevant, I think there's definitely paths. Like, these guys were good last year. Mooney was good for fantasy. Montgomery was good for fantasy. Herbert, when he got the time, he was good. Like, being on a bad team does not necessarily automatically mean you're not going to be part of a good fantasy unit, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind here. So I'm back on the clock. I'm going to try to work on completing this New York stack, and I think I'm going to take a shot on one of these receivers. I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson, and I'm going to hope that Daniel Jones falls to me. So I could have just taken Jones there, locked up, pairing him with Tony, but just that 2-man stack I don't necessarily love. So I'm going to take the risk, take one of these wide receivers from New York, and then hope that Jones is there for my next pick. Looking at the board, a lot of people already have their quarterbacks.
Yeah, they do. So I got two here for me. I've kind of reached on some guys, but this is kind of how I roll. I like to be aggressive on guys that I like.
Yeah.
Derek Carr, Justin Fields, my quarterbacks, Joe Mixon, AJ Dillon, Damien Pierce. I went Davis Price there. I was actually thinking about Vlad's boy, Raheem Mostert, and then JD McKissick. And I don't love it, but you know, I do believe Elijah Mitchell is the lead, and when he's healthy, I think he's going to be a guy that gets 20 plus carries. But who knows about his health? And I definitely don't believe that Trey Sermon is going to overtake the backfield if something happens. You could see a little bit of Davis Price in there. Devonte Adams, Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, DK Metcalf, Hunter Renfrow, and a bit of a reach in terms of ADP. Alec Pierce, 165, 153. This is a guy I've been on since day one as well. I'm not a big Paris Campbell guy. And Pierce has already run in 2 wide receiver sets. So they don't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in Indy. They like to run the rock. And Pierce has already had a Paris Campbell. I think that's very, very telling. And then Zach Ertz and Cole Kmet as tight ends here. So you went Wandell over Kenny Golladay. I actually like that. I think there's more upside with Wandell. At least I know it's just preseason, but he's doing things.
Yeah.
Brian Daboll's a creative mind. They drafted him. I think they can do some fun things with him, whether it's some end arounds or some bubble screens, some crossing routes, things like that. Jones actually had a pretty good preseason game the last time out, and he didn't even target Golladay once. Golladay, man, like, you're familiar with this guy.
Yeah,
he's really fallen. Like, I mean, look at this. Nobody even wants a piece of this guy. We're into pick 170. His ADP is 152. Why Wandell over Golladay for you?
so I think that Galladay is actually one of my highest exposure wide receivers right now, just from earlier,
Just
like
the value.
June and July. Yeah, like even back then he was falling so much, and I got so much of the Giants stack back then, and I've been on them for at least 2 or 3 months as like one of my favorite stacks for later on in drafts. And Daniel Jones just went, so that's a bummer. But in terms of Galladay, I still like him. Like, I think in terms of, again, that thing that we talked about with not having to worry about when we're going to actually roster these guys and start them, Galladay fits that mold. If he has a few weeks where he scores 2 touchdowns, even just twice, and then he scores 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, he's definitely paying off that price, right? But in terms of Wandale, if he is the guy that we kind of envision him potentially being able to be, he has 15, 16 touch upside most weeks. Where, if he can rack up 7, 8 targets and then get some work on the ground as well. They don't have anybody behind Barkley, so I think he's going to be pretty involved on the ground. This is a guy that we saw get a ton of work in college on the ground as well. So that was kind of the thought process there.
Nice. So you are up here, and then we'll talk about a pick that just happened 2 picks before you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a. I haven't seen that actually in any drafts.
I haven't seen this early yet. This is the first for me.
I'm just going to take my my second quarterback here. I already took DJ Moore. Give me Baker Mayfield. Probably a little bit early, but I don't want to get sniped again. I want to make sure I get a couple of stacks in the build here. And I am pretty deep on running back and wide receiver right now anyway. So, but yeah, let's talk Isaiah Likely.
What do you think?
It's very interesting. I personally wouldn't be taking him in the 15th round, just because I think you can probably get him in the 17th or 18th. But it's hard to say, like, I don't get the upside, right? Like, looking at this guy's roster, he's got the Chargers stack, and Likely was the second tight end off the board for him. He's went with the no tight end strategy, which definitely popular these days with how hard it is to get to tight ends. So in terms of guys on the board, I will admit, like, I don't love a ton of tight ends that are on the board. So going Likely does make some sense, but again, probably something I wouldn't do in the 15th round.
No, I don't think it's fully needed.
Yeah.
These Arizona pass catchers are super interesting. I wish the Zona would make up their mind. What are they doing? Are they trading Darrell Williams? Are they going to roll with this veteran? Like, what's happening? Because Chase Edmonds caught 90 balls in like the last 2 years. To have a guy inside this offense, like the third down role, I think is kind of significant. Like, I'm looking for a potential next man up guys that could overtake backfields. Like, I don't want Mac. I mentioned I think he's okay at the very end, but I got Pierce there. It doesn't make any sense. Sermon, I already went. Davis Price, Ingram, I'm not in on. Man, Dearness Johnson, like, if they decided to trade Kareem Hunt away, like, that guy could be pretty interesting. Zach Moss, no thanks. Gus Edwards going to start on pup. I think I'm going to roll with Eno over Darryl. Actually, you know what? Maybe let's take another wide receiver. Can't do it. I'm gonna roll with I'm gonna go with my gut here. He hasn't been impressive in these preseason games, but in camp he was starting to create a little bit of a buzz. What do you think? Do you think that there's potential in either Williams or We'll let you make your pick here first. Yeah, Austin Hooper, I like that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Got a
I
lot
think
going on there in Tennessee. What are you? Can you get Tannehill? Are you going to try to get Tannehill later? You got a couple of Titans over there.
Yeah, that's the plan. Tannehill's a guy that people don't necessarily love to draft, so I'm hoping that I can get him with my next pick. I am still 10 picks away. If it doesn't happen, totally fine, but if
Not
it
the end of the
does,
world, but I think you'll
I'll
get
take
him.
it. Yeah, so that's kind of the thought there. I could also, if Mac Jones falls, I could take him because I have Jacoby Myers as well to pair up. But I don't like with Tom Brady. I do think Tom Brady is going to be a top 10 quarterback, so I don't feel the need to get 3 if I absolutely can't. But I don't think Tom Brady is in that top tier, like guys like Herbert and Mahomes and those sorts of guys. So I don't mind having 3 just for a little bit of added upside at the quarterback position. But yeah, if I get one of those guys, that's great. If not, I don't think it's the end of the world though.
Do you think that there's a role for either or Daryl? Do you think there's any upside in taking one of those two guys? But again, you could I could be completely wrong here with They could just roll with Daryl Williams. And earlier in the year, that's kind of what I expected when they picked him up. Like in KC, I think he caught like 40 balls last year, and he was running between the tackles. Like he's a guy that has kind of proven that in a pinch, if anything happens to Connor, they can trust him a little bit and maybe trust him as a third down running back here. But I'm kind of, playing a risky game with those two guys.
I mean, I think that it's a game of if you guess the right one, that's because I think that whoever it is does definitely have a potential path to a role, right? It's just about guessing which one it's going to be for that to work out. I did see a projected depth chart with ahead of Williams, and I've heard some cut rumors for Daryl Williams or trade rumors, either way. So yeah, I think that definitely has a path, and like you mentioned, there's always been kind of a two-headed mix there in Arizona for running backs, and obviously if anything were to happen and those guys were able to get RB1 work, then yeah, there's definitely a path for upside, especially with how much we saw running backs utilized, not only at the goal line, but just in the red zone in general, and not only on the ground, but through the air as well. So yeah, definitely some upside there.
So you got Tanny. I like it. Yep. You got, cheap stack really with the Titans, right? I like Robert Woods as well as Traylon Burks. And, there seems to be a connection so far in camp with Hooper and Tannehill. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, Hooper's a pretty good tight end. He's only a few years removed from like a top 4 season at the tight end position. I think he had like 70 some odd grabs there at his last season in Atlanta. And then, he's playing on a run first team with multiple tight ends. Now this is a run first team in Tennessee, but man, he's a veteran. I'm sure he's going to have the trust of Tanny, and Tannehill kind of sneaky little rushing upside that nobody really talks about, even though it's all Derrick Henry there. So that's a cheap stack, and you got another one there with Baker and DJ. So I like that, man. You risked with Tannehill there, and you got him.
Yeah, I mean, I took the same risk with Daniel Jones, so hopefully it works out one of the two ways. But like you mentioned, like it's not always going to work out. So it's important to either understand that you're not going to be able to complete some stacks or to work out multiple routes, and that's kind of the goal. Like when I'm building lineups, or I guess rosters here, I look at my receivers and tight ends and think about potential stacking candidates. And honestly, Baker Mayfield's not a guy that I'm like going into drafts saying I need to get Baker Mayfield, but it's a spot where I get DJ Moore and I don't have any other quarterbacks, I'm totally fine with a guy like Baker. So I think that's kind of important in terms of going into these drafts and being prepared for some of that stuff.
We're going to say goodbye to Game Plus Network. We do appreciate you guys as per usual. If you want to see the end of this draft, we're going to recap it just for a few minutes and see how things played out, certainly early in the first few rounds, and go over our teams. But we do appreciate you guys hanging out here with us. Again, underdogfantasy.com. You can use the promo code FTN for a deposit match. We have all kinds of content over at FTNfantasy.com. We have best ball rankings. Vlad Sedler's updating them constantly. If you have the FTN Fantasy Football package, you will get all the best ball content. You'll get cheat sheets for your regular drafts. Again, content stacks, busts, breakouts. It's all there. Tons of rankings. Ratcliffe's game plan has 300 player profiles, and we'll be with you throughout the entire season as well. Access to the Discord channel, 40 plus tools. You can use the promo code FTN20 for 20% off, but FTN over at Underdog for a bit of a stack. So Kyle, we'll hang on. Goodbye, Game Plus Network. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Okay. We are just wrapping up here. We're done, right? You just made your last pick?
Yep.
You made your last pick. Who was your last pick? What'd you do?
I went with Zach Moss. Yeah. Definitely wanted a running back.
Pfeiffer would be proud.
Yeah, that's for sure. I wanted a running back, and in terms of looking at the board, again, chasing sheer upside, Zach Moss plays in what could easily be the best offense in football. And we've seen a lot of uncertainty with running backs over the course of being with the Bills the last couple of years. And when you're talking about whether it be Singletary, who had a good year last year, they still went out and drafted James Cook, right? So I think that there's definitely ways that it's kind of important to look at upside here. And Zach Moss fall into the end zone a couple times and call it a day there for Zach Moss here.
I'm trying to find this draft that we just did.
I think you got to go to the completed section. You don't have? Do you have it?
Results, drafts, completed.
Oh, I think you got to go to drafts and then hit completed. Yeah.
Let's look at this again all together. Okay, so let's walk through this. What do we got? All right. So just the shape of the board, how things fell. Not a lot of surprises, right? CMC Taylor, Jefferson Kupp, Eckler, Jamar Chase. Yeah, you were talking about maybe one of those guys. I've seen Chase, like you said, I've seen Chase and Eckler, even Kupp kind of fall to that 7-8 as people are a little bit worried about Stafford at this point of the season. I went Adams at 9, Najee Harris, Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce. So let's go over your team here. And actually, do you see any surprises when you look at the first 3 rounds? I don't see, a whole lot, right? Saquon, first pick in the second, Swift. I think there's like pretty good targets there in Fournette, Swift, and Saquon. I would have went Swift and Saquon over Joe Mixon, but I took Mixon there. Alvin Kamara, we talked about Mark Andrews. So Mark Andrews, second tight end off the board and a second Pitts. How do you feel about these tight ends? I feel in the past, like Travis Kelce, taking him in the first made a lot of sense because you had a significant advantage. He was super elite, but man, I don't think the gap is that large now between Pitts, Andrews, and Kelce. I mean, Andrews had a better season than Pitts last year, or the Kelce last year.
Yeah. I think that they are going very high, but it does give you, I think that it's okay just for the fact that it does give you a strong positional advantage, in my opinion. Just being able to lock in a tight end who has that upside. Like if you are, waiting, you like for example, if you go Cole Kmet and Irv Smith, which I've been doing a ton of in drafts, you need to make up points at other positions just because those guys likely are not going to go for 25 plus points very often. Andrews, Kelce, Pitts, those guys are, guys who I think can do it fairly frequently. Kelce for sure. Andrews, guys that can do it most weeks. Andrews, in like the last 6 weeks of the season, he averaged like 24.5. That was with Huntley at quarterback. But those are just guys who can go out and score 25 points every single week. Not that they're going to do that, but they have the capabilities of doing that. Guys like Irv Smith, Cole Kmet, Dawson Knox, like, popular punts, I guess, at the position, they're just not going to do that. So, it does suck that these guys are going so early because it does make it difficult to get them, but getting them still gives you a very strong positional advantage. So I think that they're fine.
I agree. It does give you an advantage. I don't love my builds when I go Pitts or Andrews. I guess I think they're okay. I just feel like my wide receivers usually, like, I don't feel like I have that alpha if I take like Andrews, but man, like almost 1,400 yards last year, more targets, more catches, same amount of touchdowns as Travis Kelce. There's nothing going on in Baltimore. Like we all like Bateman, but that's it. There's just nothing else. Their wide receiver room has a career 115 or 16 grabs. So whether it's Lamar, who likes to target Andrews, or Huntley, like you said, clearly likes to target tight ends and likely, right? We saw that in that preseason game. But guys, it was just a preseason game of the team playing like zone defense and like fourth stringers. I don't think we need to get super excited about likely, but he does seem like he's a decent player anyways. But I wouldn't be shocked if Andrews finished ahead of him again. And in KC, they have a lot of other moving pieces, right? Juju is there, MVS, Sky Moore, Hardman. So I think, like, I really do believe that Andrews will finish ahead of Kelsey again. But I'm not going to hate this pick at the end of the 12th or into the first round there. Into the third, a lot of wide receivers here. Michael Pittman, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. I took Cortland Sutton, Mike Williams, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So a ton of wideouts. We didn't really talk about Sutton, but you said you had him. You've had a lot of shares of him. I agree. I think he's a potential league winner, man. I really do. Even in the third, fourth, whatever he is, wherever he does fall for you, I just think it's a match made in heaven, him and Russell Wilson. The way that he runs his routes, and he's a deep target guy. And for Russell Wilson, 74 pass attempts of at least 20 yards down the field, which was number one, and 19% of his pass attempts were deep targets. These are tools that are included in the FTN fantasy package. So I just think that's a really good match. Into round 4, we saw 3 quarterbacks go off the board: Lamar, Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. Now, for you didn't take your first quarterback until Brady. And then again, you got some late guys here in Baker and Tannehill. I kind of did the same thing. I didn't take my first quarterback until round 9. You did round 8. And then I did Fields. And then that was it. I was going to try to get – I've been doing a lot of Brevin Jordan, Nico Collins, and Davis Mills at the end of drafts. It didn't totally work out for me there. But are you typically – I guess it depends on your builds. Do you have more shares of guys in around round 6, 7, 8? Or do you have – a little bit of Allen and Herbert and Lamar and Hurts in your life?
So I have a pretty good amount of Mahomes and Herbert. I want more Allen. That's the one quarterback up top that I want more of. And then the most exposure that I have at quarterback is Daniel Jones. Second is Davis Mills. Yeah, they're just guys that you can get.
Too.
Yeah, they're just guys that you can get in most drafts. Like I have Jones, I have a ton of Mills, I have a ton of Cousins, Fields. Like those guys are just very easy to get. I tend to kind of live more so in the mid-range. Like I have a lot of Burrow, I have a lot of Brady, but yeah, of the studs, Herbert and Mahomes are where I have the most of. Hurts is up there as well. I guess he's maybe more so in the mid-range. Allen's the guy that I had the least amount of those guys. I guess Kyler technically, if you list him in that group, but it's not the guys that I don't like. It's just guys that are hard to get in drafts. Especially when I am pretty focused on trying to get stacks in these drafts. But yeah, so it's not like it's a spot where I'm actively avoiding the top guys, but it's just the bottom tier guys are so much easier to get. But I love all of them. Any of them that I can possibly get. I think Lance is the one that might be going a little bit too high in best ball, but it's hard to say that he doesn't have the upside. Like we saw what he can do on the ground last year when he got the chance. So I think all these guys have monstrous upside. For me, it's just how you can correlate them and pair them up with people.
Right. Yeah, it really does depend on how the first couple rounds of your draft, goes. If you can get Diggs, it'd be nice to get Allen. You got to kind of do that right away. And then Gabe Davis, like you can get Knox a little bit later on, and maybe Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder. I really like I have a couple Lamar and Andrews. Like I think that's a bit of a fun build there.
Yeah.
Trey Lance goes here. So we mentioned in the 4th, Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar. And then in the 5th here, so it's a little bit of a quarterback run, right? And then we got Murray and Hurts just after Mahomes, Herbert, and Jackson. And the Trey Lance goes in the 6th. Didn't look great last night, but man, there really is a lot of upside with him. There's going to be some inconsistencies in his game. Like we're going to be talking about this throughout the year, Kyle, I'm sure, right? Lance didn't look great. He wasn't accurate. He was, 12 for 24, and he threw for $189. But in his 2 starts last year at 130 rushing yards, like that's right there, right? It's a solid floor. We believe in Shanahan as a play caller. We have to, right? You could say whatever you want about the running backs that he uses and things like that, but he's a great play caller. They have guys that are explosive after the catch, and Kittle and Ayuk and Debo. That I agree. 6 is a little steep here, but again, if you feel like, I think you just have to be aggressive. If he's one of your guys, at that point, once Hurts and Kyler are coming off the board, you really got to be thinking about him. You got to grab him. I wouldn't be shocked if Burrow and Wilson had a better fantasy season. And I think, correlating Burrow with the 2 studs and Wilson with the 2 studs that he has, and Judy and Sutton, I think it's a little bit easier to get done. But man, Lance, I don't hate it here. I would have I don't know how this draft played out. I don't know if he could have gotten Lance and Ayuk, but they kind of went side by side there. That's a stack that I could get behind.
Yeah, so Ayuk went one pick before Lance. So if Ayuk lasted there, he could have gone Lance and then Ayuk right away.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean Lance basically went in the 7th, right? He was the last pick in the 6th round, so I don't think it was necessarily too early. I do like Burrow more than Lance. It's like I know the rushing upside is so prominent, but I mean, think back on what we saw from Burrow last year. There was handful of 30+ games, and that's what you need from quarterbacks here in best ball. So I do like Burrow more than Lance. Maybe that's a reason why I'm not getting enough Lance, because it's just so much easier to get to Burrow, and it's easier to pair receivers up with Burrow because you have 3 of them who are viable, and fairly easy to get. I guess Chase is kind of luck of the draw where you are in the draft order, but the Bengals stack is just, I talked about them in that stacking video, and I said I don't need to talk about them because everybody knows how good they all are. So that's just kind of like the self-explanatory stack there with Cincy.
I like some of these wide receivers. I'm coming around on Christian Kirk. From just a volume standpoint, he really should get a lot of opportunity there with Trevor Lawrence, despite getting paid like one of the best wide receivers in football. I think at this point as wide receiver 40ish, I think he's a pretty good target, pick 73 there. Hopkins, I'm not really in on Hopkins. I don't know if this guy's got Kyler here. Cody does not have Kyler. I don't know, man. Like, I think he needs to fall a little bit more for me. The first 6 weeks of the season, not going to see him for a bit. But again, a best ball format, you're just kind of shooting for upside. You get through it for the first 6 weeks of the season. He's got Michael Pittman, Brendan Ayuk. So his wide receivers, like, there's just a lot of question marks here. AJ Green, I guess he's thinking AJ for the first 6 weeks of the season. Then Hopkins comes in. Corey Davis is here. Dobbs, Julio Jones, Brendan Ayuk, and Michael Pittman. Probably wouldn't did Hopkins there, but I like Devonte. I think there's pretty good value. You got Kadarius Toney. I love the Kadarius Toney pick. Let's see him on the field here soon. But man, when he's on the field, I think he's going to be a big time factor inside this offense. Like after Saquon, I think he's going to be, like kind of the heart of this offense. Hunter Renfrow, MVS, and Chris Olave. I like all these shots in here. Chase Edmonds and Ramondre Stevenson, I think, are pretty solid picks as well. A lot of people want Edmonds to be a bell cow. I just don't think that's going to happen, guys. Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, Gaskin on the squad. Edmonds only has like 3 or 4 games with 14 carries in his career. I just think he's definitely going to be a player in the passing game here for Miami, but I think it's a fine pick. I just hear a lot of people talking about Chase Edmonds being a bell cow. I just don't think it's going to happen. Ramondre, I think, could break out. Then we get into round 8. A lot of backs here. You went Brady. I went Pierce. He ended up being RB28 in this format, so it may seem like a reach, but I have him ranked higher than that. Damian Harrison there, Jacobs, Pollard, Penny, Hunt, George Pickens, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson. Any names here? That Amari Cooper. Like, what do you think about Amari Cooper going in round 8, even though we know that Jacoby Brissett most likely is the quarterback for him in the first 11 games or so?
So I was actually thinking about this in the middle of one of my drafts the other day, and I was like, I have no Amari Cooper. Like, I actually think I have 0 shares of Amari Cooper, and I've drafted like over 100 teams. Like, and it's not that I think that might be a mistake. That's like the main thing here. I have like 7 shares to Amari Cooper. So like it's just not
7 of your 100. Not a ton.
It's not a ton at all. And like he is going to be the number 1 guy, but it's just, you think back on the Odell days, like they refused to get him involved. They refused to really utilize the pass. They're definitely not going to do that with Brissett. They could potentially do it, and they should do it with Watson when he comes back. But by then, you're thinking week 11, and like so for Cooper, like it's probably not accurate because I'm sure he can have some good weeks in those first 11 weeks. But I sort of align Cooper with Watson, where it's just like, I'm not going to have him until week 12, or I think it's week 13 actually. They're on bye week 12,
week 13.
So that's kind of how I'm approaching it. And so for a guy who's still 8th round is actually a fall for Cooper. He's actually probably going a little bit earlier in standard drafts. Like in the 7th round, there's so many wide receivers that I like. Like Kadarius Toney is a big target for me. Olave is a guy that went around here that we talked about that I really like. So there's just so many wide receivers here. And like even if you wanted to compare him to DeAndre Hopkins, I would rather have Hopkins because in those first 6 weeks, you're getting nothing from Hopkins. It's a very good chance you also get nothing from Amari Cooper. And by nothing,
Yeah.
I mean to where you're not in your starting 3 wide receivers, and I guess in your flex as well. But so that's kind of the thought process for me on Cooper. I just don't love it a ton. But again, like I do have a lot of Watson from early on, like in June when he was like kind of the case is kind of up in the air on if he was going to get suspended or whatnot. So I do have a good amount of Watson, which again, come week 12 or week 13, I guess, like there is some upside there. But for Cooper, who's still going in the 7th, 8th round, I've even seen him go in the 6th at times. If he falls, I'll take him. But he's not a guy that I'm like reaching to get.
We'll get out of here in a minute. Just wanted to, kind of recap the board and see where there's some value here and things that may have been interesting. He goes as wide receiver 45. I do
Yeah.
agree. There's other guys like that I would rather have, like you mentioned, Kadarius. I like Hunter Renfrow as a player. I just think he's going to be completely the way that he runs his routes and the attention that is going to be on Adams and Waller. I think Renfro is a guy that's going to be pretty sneaky this year. MVS, I think, is a pretty good dart throw. Is like, he's on the field, 2 wide receiver sets. So I like Sky Moore too, but I think it's going to take some time for Sky Moore. I think it's correct that MVS is kind of going ahead of him. Olave, and then Cooper. I mean, I think we can look at Cooper the same way we've looked at Brendan Cooks over the past couple of years. Like, man, the
Yeah.
offense, the quarterback play, but the volume, like when we're going over our free tools at FTN in terms of air yards and target share, this guy's going to be top 10. He's going to be top 10 in both of those categories, but they may not score a lot of points
When
in
you just
Cleveland. And
said,
it's definitely going to be a run heavy team.
yeah, when you just said that he went as wide receiver 45, I looked and my projections have him as wide receiver 27. So now I feel like, oh, now I got to get back into these drafts and get a bunch of Amari Cooper to
I did the
normalize
Jake
some of this stuff.
Seeley draft the other day, and I took him as wide receiver 36, and I'm with you. Like, he's not on my radar. I'm not like, oh man, I gotta have Murray
Yeah.
Cooper here, even though I know he's gonna fall down draft boards. But there just becomes a certain point where, you know what, fine, I'll just take him. And for this guy here, he didn't really attack wide receiver for a bit. So in the 6th, he goes Thomas, then he goes Olave. Did he get Jameis? It's like, yeah, he did. So it's a cheap like Saint stack. I'm on board with that. And then Amari Cooper, Lockett. He takes Lockett again. He's just taking all the value. Tyler Lockett went as wide receiver 53. And then he gets Tolbert in there and KJ Osborne. So, yeah, I mean, he's fallen down draft boards. Don't let him fall too far. If he's going like 9th, 10th, I think you probably pull the trigger. And at that point, if it doesn't work out, you can hit the waiver wire. Certainly in these formats, you cannot. You are shooting for upside here.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up. Where did Likely go again? Let's just kind of
15th round, I believe.
15th round. So yeah, wow. He goes Taysom Hill's in here, Hayden Hurst, David Njoku, Tyler Higbee, Evan Ingram, Noah Fant, Logan Thomas, who's back on the field. It's good. Brevin Jordan, Mo Alley Cox, Foster Moreau. Wow, okay, nice. So yeah, interesting that Likely that's as high as I've seen him go into the 170s. Gerald Everett was already on the squad too. He's got Bateman and he doesn't have Lamar. So it's an interesting decision there for sure. And then he goes for a 3rd tight end there in Thomas. Let's recap your squad and we'll get out here on that. So what'd you do here? So he's got Kyle's got Tom Brady, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson, Khalil Herbert, Zach Moss. For example, I think Gibson may have went a round or 2 before. So he is falling down draft boards. Yeah, so you took Robinson in the 11th and Gibson goes here in the 9th, sprinkled in all the backs, I guess, that you don't want. I don't know, Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson. People are not in on those guys. Then you got the duo in Buffalo. It's interesting, like Cook has been going ahead of Devin Singletary lately. That's something that's happened here over the past couple of weeks, side by side. I think Melvin Gordon and Kenneth Walker are really good values in the 10th. Even Cordell Patterson, even though I believe in Algier. And then you go Robinson. I like the pick. We could talk about that a little bit more in a second. You also went Khalil Herbert, Zach Moss. Like your wideouts, man. Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Kadarius Toney, Traylon Burks, Jacoby Myers, Wan'Dale Robinson. So you didn't get the giant stack, but you did pair up Ryan Tannehill with Traylon Burks and Austin Hooper. You got Waller there, who you snaked from me, but we're okay with that. And you do have, of course, the Brady and Evans stack, and then DJ Moore and Baker. So you got some stacks here. What do you think overall?
Yeah, so well, I just realized that both my tight ends have a week 6 bye, and I only drafted 2 of them, so that's what not to do. Um, that was definitely a bad mistake. I probably should have taken another tight end in the last round instead of Zach Moss, but again, I was so focused on building out that stack with the Titans, I didn't even really consider it. So that's not a good move. I actually, when we talk about the Robinson versus Gibson discussion, I actually wanted Gibson in the 9th, but he got
Okay.
sniped 1 pick before me, so I ended up taking Traylon Burks. Since I didn't get Gibson, I took Robinson later. Gibson is one
Is
of
there
these
a point?
guys.
Let me jump in here. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
Keep going about Gibson. Is there a point where you're like, you know what, this is too far? Like, I guess that's the point for you. The 9th is like, come
yeah.
on, man. Like, this guy is going to be involved. He's not just going to return punts all year.
Yeah, it's the ninth round for me. Like there's definitely guys that I'm not excited about, and maybe I should be giving Amari Cooper the same sort of scope. But like if Gibson's there in the 9th, if Montgomery's there in the 6th or 7th, Josh Jacobs, if he's there in the 8th or 9th, like there's plenty of guys here who might not be guys I'm like dying to have on my roster, but in best ball formats where again you don't need to set your lineup every week, it's going to be set based on how they perform. Definitely interest. Like Gibson, if he has a good year, he if he has a good year and we're like, week 12 and he's the RB1 there, he's maybe even somehow taking over that third down role as well. And he's a 3 down back, which might seem unlikely now, but if that somehow happens and we redraft in week 12, he's probably a top 4 round pick. So like there's obviously value here at this, 9th and sometimes even in the 10th round, you can get Gibson. So I'm a huge Gibson fan. I think he's a really good athlete, a really good running back, and he's really done nothing but perform when he gets the time. I know that there's some fumble issues, but if he's there in the 9th or even the 10th, I'm smiling and drafting him, even though the hate is gone so far. But now at the 9th round, this is around guys like Kenneth Walker, for example. Like there's obviously
Mhm.
question marks with all of these guys. So am I going to take a chance on a guy who has a real chance to be a top 15 running back because he's done it 2 years in a row? So yeah, I'll take that shot on Gibson.
I think so too. Like people who've been watching the show, I haven't been a fan of his for a couple of years. It's not him. It's kind of Ron Rivera and the way they've used him and J.D.
Yeah,
McKissick, and then he's taking shots at him all offseason, and then they draft Robinson as a big body back who can steal first and second down touches and goal line work. Like there's reasons to be concerned, but at this point of the draft, like I just didn't like where he was going as RB20, and now it's just
yeah,
not the case, right?
exactly.
So I think there's a lot of value. And I can say the same thing about Miles Sanders. Like
Yeah,
it's the same deal. Like especially if you're looking for, as your third or your fourth running back, these guys can be, they can have top 24 weeks for you easily, right? They're both explosive, and it could work out for you. So it creates, because people are not in on them, they're not on the field. There's conflicting reports here in practice and training camp. It creates a buying window, so don't totally fade these guys. It's just like the Mari Cooper talk. They're at some point there becomes value and upside in taking these guys where they are. Okay, so for me on the way out here, I went. I don't love my backs at all after the first three, but I went Derek Carr, Justin Fields. I didn't go a third quarterback. Like I said, I was thinking about maybe Davis Mills towards the end. I have like a little bit of Davis Mills and Jared Goff as guys towards the end of my drafts that maybe just could be okay. Joe Mixon, AJ Dillon, Damien Pierce. Again, just if you're joining us, Pierce goes as RB28. Davis Price and Eno Benjamin. I was back and forth between him and Darrell Williams. You see the ADP, maybe a slight reach, but there wasn't really a lot of other running backs that I liked, and I knew I was going to go tight end and wide receiver at the end. Maybe Eno can take that third down role. We'll see. Devonte Adams to go with Devonte Adams and Hunter Renfrow to go with Derek Carr. Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, DK Metcalf, Alec Pierce, Zay Jones there at the end. David Bell is a bit of a dart throw. At least he's on the field now. And then Cole Kmet with Zach Ertz, and I did go Brevin Jordan towards the end. So this seems okay. Again, running backs, I would really need. I think I'd need Davis Price, to kind of pop off and show me something. But I think I have three decent running backs. I got the Raiders stack there, and the Bears, which won't score. They won't score a lot of points, but we do got a little bit of Fields to Komet. Maybe we can see some touchdowns in there as well. Dude, this was awesome. A lot of fun. Drafts are just great, right? It's draft season. You're doing another one today on FTN Network. What time's that running at? 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock. Yep.
Nice. You and Pfeiffer?
Yep.
Awesome. So if you guys want to hang out and maybe even join them, check them out. They'll be going live here at our FTN Network YouTube page. We have a lot happening on our FTN Network YouTube page, lots of live drafts. So take part, ask some questions, and we'll always be around to answer them. So we'll say goodbye for now, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Chris from Greenwood, and this is My Nova Scotia. Enjoy amazing live music around Halifax at the TD Halifax Jazz Festival, July 8th to the 16th. From July 17th to the 24th, it's the Halifax Pride Festival. And if you're like me, you can never get enough golf. It's the best way to see some of Nova Scotia's most beautiful scenery. Visit novascotia.com to plan your vacation. Our greens are awesome. So when are you coming?